Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm your host today. We want to thank our sponsors today, Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. They're a new sponsor. Welcome, Southeast Quilt and Textiles. They're down the road from me. I'm excited to have them on board. As always, if you would, please put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your comments in the chat. Bring those on. But I can't always see those. So please put your Q&A, your questions in Q&A, and then we'll try to get to as many as we can. Today, I'm excited. We have Florencia Campos Correa. She is from Chile. Florencia is an industrial designer and the founder of Ullvuna. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. She can help me with that later. A brand that inspires and promotes creativity through pin loom weaving. She's been practicing pin loom weaving and sharing her knowledge for 15 years. Florencia is based in Chile, where she designs and develops on-demand pin loom weaving kits, books, patterns, videos, and classes. She's the author of 4 pin loom weaving books, one of which, 100 Pin Loom Squares, has been translated into 7 languages. She's a busy woman, and we're going to learn more about her today. Hello, Florencia. Are you there? There she is.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
We'd love to have you here. It's great when we have somebody so far away to come visit with us. We appreciate that. So first of all, what is your favorite tea?
It's Pennyroyal. It's poleo in Spanish. I don't know if you know it. It has a great flavor and smell. It's great for your stomach. I love it.
Well, good. That's a new one. We like the new ones. That's good. So how did you get started in fiber?
Well, I think I have been always surrounded by fibers since an early age. My mom is an avid knitter and crocheter till these days. Also, my 2 grandmothers. I think my great grandmother is the one that taught me how to crochet. So it's really something quite natural at home.
Oh, okay. All right. So what attracted you to weaving? Because it sounds like you were in other fibers, and then you came upon these pin looms. How did that happen?
Well, it all started one day when I was already an industrial designer, but trying to find a job. And my mom went to Argentina, and she got to know these pin looms with nails, and she wanted to make a shop and make shawls with these pin looms she saw. So she told me, now that you're doing nothing, right, to try to find a job, maybe you can make these shawls for my shop. So she gave me this big triangle, this pin loom, triangle pin loom. And she said, well, I think you can weave it this way. We try it out, and we achieve a woven shawl. But I thought it was too boring because a triangle is not very versatile. So I thought, why don't we build a square? So I made one, and it was a bit difficult to understand how it worked, but it was similar to the triangle. So then I said, why not making a rectangle? And that is the way I started. So at the beginning, I eventually found a job and work in textile design. So in parallel, I started this Etsy shop, selling finished items through this technique.
Now, have you ever woven on a floor loom with a bunch of harnesses, or have you stayed with the pin loom?
I have tried heavy rigids and things like that. There's another kind of Mapuche pin looms in Chile. I have tried a few, but I certainly like the ones that you can that you can carry, that you can store easily. So that is the
Mhm.
way I am based on pin loom weaving, which I call portable weaving.
There you go. Well, we're going to look at some of your woven pieces right now, and I I would like for you to talk about what attracted you to such a simple loom. It seems like a lot of people can't stay at a simple loom. They've got to go on and do something else. So what do you think is the attraction of such a simple loom? For example, when you're teaching new students, what kind of reactions do they have to, look what I can make with this simple loom?
Well, exactly. I mean, specifically in the 4 by 4 inches squares,
Mhm.
like the ones you see here, I remember a phrase that a student said. She said, "From a pile of weebies, the magic happens." And that's true because they can just watch TV and make a lot of weebies or woven squares and then decide later on what they can make with them. So that is a sort of relief because you don't have to plan too much, especially when you're using
Oh,
this as a hobby, something to relax. You don't want to plan too much or maybe feel like frustrated because you're not sure about the next project you want to make. So you just make these weebies, a pile of them, and then someday the idea just appears, the idea of what you want to make with them. Also the versatility, the variety of different stitches you can make, especially in these ones, the 4 by 4 inches. You can make motifs, like
yeah.
trees, like letters, different patterns like the Nordic folks I have designed a few times, geometric ones. So it's interesting, especially when you learn how to make them, that you can play with stitches a lot.
These are great patterns. I love these with the holiday motifs and everything. And
Yes.
later we're going to talk about the Nordic folk patterns because I do want to talk more about that one. But if I can back up a little bit, I'm curious, what, how did your design background impact on you as a fiber artist?
Well, I think was most I mean important for me was that as I studied industrial design, and it's not art, it's design, you understand that you have to conceive what you make as the result of what others want. When you're an artist, you design or you create from your heart. I mean, from my heart, it flows and I make something. But when you're a designer, you have to create for others to solve a problem. So that you have a certain target and you have a certain, well, of course, problem to solve. And that way, you learn how to I don't know, to stand on others' feet. So it was easy to stop in some point of my business making what I love to do, and instead starting listening to what my audience wanted to make, wanted to the way they work, the way they wear, their age, their gender, their culture. Maybe that I like to experiment, but some of them just want the guide to follow its stitch. So I think that that was very important. And also the technical, I don't know, the software knowledge I learned because it was a different way to conceive these sort of products. I could design my own pin looms. I could make them on demand, export the files, send them, and develop this kind of kits, but also improve them, work with different materials, things like that.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that because you have a fascinating business, and I want to talk more about how you approach that because it's very impressive. But I want to talk a little bit more about your work and especially the color. And these next pieces are just beautiful. And the one thing I wanted to focus in on is that I was thinking about how the pattern or the look of the fiber changes when, like on the right, it's just one color, but you've got different texture. And on the right, you have both the texture and the color difference. So, what do you think? How do you decide on your color choices? Because it really makes a big difference in the pattern, doesn't it?
Well, again, going back to my I don't know, the this stage in my career where I used to work for a company. I used to work for the retail industry for decoration items to make. I used to make a lot of fabrics and things like that. I love flowers, you know, and flowers have a lot of colors. So I think that is the way I started working with a lot of colors, mixing them. Then I worked in a wool covering company, which also helped. So I think that is a starting point, but I love colors. I like to combine them. I am colorful in the ways I surround myself at home and the ways I dress myself. So I think that gives you the practice, you know, like you dress up every morning and you use colors. So it's easy then to choose the yarns. Of course, I use the knowledge from my career. I use programs sometimes to Photoshop, I don't know, a design and tried colors. And because even though you sometimes think that a combination will work, the proportion is also very important. So you have to try and practice. But
Mm.
I am basically a colorful person, so it's easy for me. I mean, I don't know if you ask me white and black, I don't know how to combine them really. I maybe I would make horrible combinations
Mm.
or boring ones.
Well, these are beautiful. I love these. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Um, so the other thing that struck me about your work, because I mean, I have pin looms, I've done pin looms, and I have to say, I'm still at the baby stage of, I make a square and I connect it to another square. And when I was looking at your work, I just was floored by what you have created with just these squares. And here's a great example of that. I mean, both of these, I guess you would say, well, one looks like a vest and the other's a top, but it's so creative the way that you've just taken a simple square and just done these amazing things with them. So, when you're trying to design, what do you think is the most challenging part of how to put the squares together so they work for what you want?
Well, it really depends on the kind of squares you work because here you
Ah,
have the 4 by 4 inches, which are quite small, but then you have the bias woven ones that are like the ones here, very big ones. So you can make maybe 4 squares and you have a sweater. So it's very different the way you face its challenge. So in this case of the pictures, those are designs included in my last book, oversized projects on a pin loom. So the projects included are oversized top designs like this too. So the big challenge was how I could make a design that could fit in different sizes of women body, you know, because that was a question that I used to receive when I used to make these finished items. People used, I mean, my clients used to ask, well, how can you make me, I don't know, this sweater for this size, but this part has to be smaller, and I don't know. It was quite a challenge to achieve that. So when I made this book, I said, okay, I don't want to make like it's designed for S, M, L size, just one single one, and they should fit more or less. I mean, of course, you have two extremes. Maybe one fits very perfect, but I think it's like, I don't know, it's something that we all want, that we put something over us and it fits. We don't have to, oh, no, it doesn't, oh, I have to change the design. So that was like a sort of struggle in that, or the challenge I had in that book. And in the other ones, maybe we can see those designs later when you
mhm.
have big pieces. The challenge is more about how you can to make the best of this technique, the best of its technique. I tend to mix techniques. The main part is bias weaving, for example, but then you complement it with, for example, crochet in the parts with crochet. It's important, or where crochet will be adding a benefit, you know, and knitting and macrame and other techniques.
Is that how you join the squares together, is through crochet?
In this case, I mostly sew them, just sew them.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I
Okay.
use the other techniques in the bias woven squares, the bigger one, or bias
Uh-huh.
woven triangles. In this case, I tend to just join them, sew them with I mean, the yarn needle and the thread, and then I make the finishing, you know, with crochet or cuffs with knitting, and it depends.
I love these. They're just such a simple design, but complicated enough that it's interesting, especially with the blue one, if the solid blue down the middle. So was it a lot of trial and error? Like you would start putting them together and go, well, this isn't going to work, and then you would try something else, or you just knew?
No, what I do, I have a mannequin. I
Oh,
have
okay.
I have two main ways to do this. The first one, I have a mannequin, which is called Roberta. You know, she has a
Mhm.
name. It's my size, more or less, which is quite average. And then I cut these pieces of fabric, which are 4 by 4 inches, but they are non-elastic, so they will work. They will work the way these woven squares will work. You know, they will I forget the word, doesn't matter. But the thing is, I use this mannequin, I use safety pins or different pins, and I start like playing with it. I say, okay, I can do this, I can do this. And I have sometimes plain color squares, or some of them have different stitches, like, I don't know, like the fabric has a motif, maybe a geometric one, like the design in the left. So
Mhm.
then it's easier to imagine a stitch that will fit that design, you know, and the colors, things like that. So that is one technique. And the other technique, I just grab a sweater that I like from my, I don't know, my closet, let's say, and I say,
Uh-huh.
oh, I'm gonna put a lot of the same fabric squares over it and see what happens. Sometimes if the shape of that sweater is too intricate, of course, I won't match the same shape. But that is the interesting thing, because then you achieve something completely different and you say, oh, wow, that's an interesting sweater to make. Those are the two main techniques I use to design my garments, or
That's
even
a,
sometimes
that's a
things.
great idea. I never thought about the sweater thing. That's a great idea. Well, we're going to talk some more about design in a minute. But we are going to talk right now and show the bias woven squares that you mentioned earlier. And I was kind of confused when I heard the term. So hopefully I'm probably not alone. So first of all, if you can talk some about what you mean by bias woven squares, and then can you talk some about these pieces and how, and like you said, they're a little bit different than the little 4 by 4 squares.
Yes, well, bias weaving means continuous strand weaving,
Oh, okay.
rapid weaving, diagonal weaving, speed weaving. I mean, it has a lot of names. But what you mean is that you will have a pin loom that has a I don't know, it's a square, it can be a square, triangle, rectangle, hexagon.
Oh,
And
okay.
the distance between it has pins or nails all around in all the sides, and the distance between them is the same. That is a pin loom that will work for bias weaving. That's the first thing.
Okay.
And second, as you are weaving diagonally, you naturally achieve a plait, which is amazing because you are doing plain weaving. If you just started and you just started from scratch, you don't know how this technique works. You just follow the orders, and suddenly your teacher says, "Okay, change color yarn." You change it, and you continue weaving, and suddenly the plate appears with no effort. I mean, it's like magic for starters, for beginners. So that is mostly bias weaving. I started with this technique 15 years ago. Those are quite old designs from those days that then I started making us patterns, you know, digital patterns, so anyone could make them. And for example, you have the butterfly there upright,
Mm,
and it's just simply 3 squares, you know, very simple. The pattern works differently on the 3 squares. I usually make the same pattern so they fit and they look like a whole fabric, you know, but in this case they are different. And then you add the details like the finishing, the button, which makes them look more professional or like a real garment.
mm,
And all of them just are, I am using squares, most of them. Squares or rectangles, because I used to have like a big rectangle that included squares, so it was easier to make it instead of just making it square. But the
mm.
amazing thing about bias weaving is that compared to other crafting techniques in other also weaving techniques, it's the fastest one. Not only because you make the weft and the warp layers at the same time, but also because when you're weaving, let's say the upper part, the lower part, it's already woven. So it's very fast. I mean, let's say a 12 by 12 inches woven square would take around 15 or 20 minutes. You know, so you in 4 hours you can have a complete sweater, for example. So for someone like me, or maybe you, I'm not sure, in which if your personality is quite, I don't know, you want things made very fast and you want to achieve results, it's fantastic because you don't have to wait too much time, you know. The rewarding sense, it's immediately. I mean,
Hmm.
that is for those kind of people, I think. You can
Yeah, I
have.
think we all need a little immediate gratification from time to time. I can see that. Absolutely. Well, this next image that we have, I thought was brilliant on your part. It shows how you combine digital with your weaving and showed the same product, the same pattern, but with different colors combination. And, you know, for some of us who don't have a lot of imagination, it's great to be able to say, oh, I really like that first one, but if I had seen the third one, I would have bought that, right? So, and I was thinking about how I was wondering again, did your design background help you come up with ways to come up with the digital like this?
Well, yes, at university we used a lot of Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, and of course the 3D programs that worked for making products.
Hmm.
But when I started 15 years ago, I used to make these finished items, and I used to just publish one on Etsy, one, let's say the first sweater, and then I was open to custom orders. So I had clients who wrote me to say, okay, I like this one, but at this size, and maybe, I don't know, my breast this size, but then my waist, I mean, like very specific details they wanted to change. But color was an issue, of course. We all have our own options, or the ones we like. So I used to make this kind of options for them. So the big challenge wasn't this, because I love to do this. I learned it. I have tried it a lot. The challenge was then trying to find in the market the same colors. So, but you have shops that dye the yarns for you. Was sometimes difficult to find the exact thickness, things like that. But it was amazing that I could do for real the things I do in Photoshop. And also, it was great because sometimes I wasn't being creating enough to propose color options. Because even though I like colors, I like to combine them. I think I am trying something new. You are not. You tend to do the same combinations. For example, I don't like blues too much. I'm more like a hot colors combination. So in this with this option, I could imagine that those uncommon options, or the ones I never imagined, could work. So it was great for that too. I could, for example, make a contest and they could vote, and I say, okay, I didn't know that much people like this kind of options without weaving it, you know? So I
Yeah.
could save a lot of time, money, effort doing this kind of exercises, proposals.
Well, you've published several books, right? And we're going to show the covers of two of them. Excuse me. Now, the one on the right is your first book, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you've published so many more after this, right?
Or yes, one, two,
Yeah.
three,
So
three.
I always ask this because I'm always amazed. First of all, I'm always amazed when anybody publishes a book. It's so much work. But I'm also curious when you publish a book, it's like when you teach something, I think it changes how you view things. Once you published a book, do you think it changed how you approached your weaving, you know, how you approached your art?
I don't think it was the book itself, but the
Uh-huh.
way I could make a book. Because that first book, I sold it. I was offered to make a book, and it was sold to a publishing company. So I don't own the rights. If you want it, I don't own the rights. I don't have I cannot print new copies. And even though it's in 7 languages, and it was great to make that book, I didn't have much choice about it then when it was already published. So I didn't know that self-publishing exists. I mean, I didn't know. I had to search a bit. And when I discovered that, I think that those things, publishing a book and then discovering that I could publish it on my own, was amazing um, because I could print it on demand. It's not always only publishing it, self-publishing, but also printing on demand. So you don't need much money.
Mhm.
You already have the designs, or you can make them, but it's not great effort. It's something you always do. But then you can print them and send the copies locally. I make the design here in Chile. I make the book file here in Chile. And then if you are in the States and you order a print, it's print locally. And I don't have to invest in too many copies. I don't have to, of course, if I want, hire a designer because I have sponsors for the yarn, for the looms, things like that. So it's quite easy, even though it's a great effort. It's just like creating the idea, developing the projects, and there you are. You can send what you do all over the world. So, I mean, that is what that first book opened up to me. The idea of, oh, I can have my own books worldwide without much investment.
So is there a book that people should start with? Are they done like that, or do they have different topics?
Well, that first one, 100 Pin Loom Squares, is
Mhm.
very complete, but it was published in when I didn't know much about that sort of pin loom. That technique that I call it trios weaving because it has three nails with a space.
Oh,
It
okay, right.
worked in a way, and then bias weaving works another way, tapestry weaving another way. I mean, in my classes or in my website, even in my website, I always say there are three main ways of weaving, three weaving methods, and that one is that specific one. So I show that, but even though it has a lot of color combinations and it's very detailed, I didn't have much experience. So I would say what the other books have, the self-published, better than that one is that just the creativity issue. I mean, more designs, more details, more motifs, more interesting projects. That's a big difference. But the last one that is in the left side, oversized projects on a Pin Loom, is more specific on one way of warping,
Mhm.
but more I don't know, profound, more deep in that technique, more creative. So it really depends on you, on what you want to learn. But it
Does
will guide
each,
you from scratch on that technique until you achieve a top project.
that's what I was going to ask. Does each book start you from the beginning? Like if you don't know how to weave, it'll teach you how at the beginning?
This one does. I have another, is not here, that only has patterns, let's say,
Oh,
just
okay.
patterns. But
Okay.
people love
Is that
that.
the 30/30 pattern?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because just patterns, 30 patterns, nothing
Okay.
else. No false promises, it's just that. And they like it
Well,
because they already know how to weave, so they use the patterns.
I can't imagine how you've not changed or progressed as you're making all these things for your books. I'm assuming that you've really, you know, kind of turned a corner or developed a new style or something as you're working on all these patterns.
Sorry, again.
I would imagine that you developed more as you were making these patterns for the books. And I guess I'm saying that because I've heard from other people who do books about that's a lot of work to make all those samples, right?
Oh, sorry, you mean the development.
Yeah.
Yes, but I have, for example, I have in Chile a team of knitters. There is Gisela, which is my right hand in the weaving samples. And she, for example, for that last book that required a lot of squares, she had a team of weavers.
Really?
Yes. So I always have help. I started the project, but then I have a lot of help to finish it. Or it's not the way. I mean, one of those tops can have like 100 squares, things like that, with
Yeah.
a intricate pattern. So it's no way I can make it. But I work a lot, even though. But I work more in the computer,
Oh,
and for massive things, I have people that help me, like Gisela.
that's cool. So now we're going to go back to the Nordic folk patterns, and that's this next image. And so would you just talk a little bit about what is the Nordic folk patterns? And then how did you get on this? What was the attraction for you to do these images, to do these patterns?
Well, I was just trying things, you know. I was trying to make something.
Hey, Mandy, we don't have an image. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Don't worry.
Florencia.
Yeah,
Mandy, we don't have
my
an image.
screen sharing is paused, so give me
Oh dear. Okay. Well, keep
stand
going.
by, stand by.
Go ahead, Florencia. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes.
Technical
Well,
difficulties.
yes. I was trying things. I was trying to instead of just again maybe it was like this designer focus instead of an artist focus. I wanted to make things for different cultures. I said, well, maybe if I make Latin designs will be one style, but what about trying to reach about to make a research about other cultures and make things that other people would connect with. Okay, so I made a little research. I love Nordic folk patterns for Isle and that stuff. So I did a little research, and that is the way I work with most of my pattern collections. I start with an idea, then I dig a little bit, research, Google a few motifs, the way they work, colors, shapes, and then, which is the most difficult, is to translate those aspects to the technique, which has a lot of restrictions, you know. And even though I want to make a heart, let's say, which is something that is very present in my Nordic folk designs, I have to make it noticeable. This is not like painting on a canvas.
Uh-huh.
And also, I can think it's a heart, but everyone has to notice that. So that is the big challenge. And then it's just about applying colors, playing a little. And when you make 2 or 3 designs, it flows. It's quite easy.
Mhm.
But I have these ones. I have another's based on, for example, I did a collection of animals. Was animals from the goods. So it was interesting because then you had to to make it noticeable, to make animals on these restricted Guben squares wasn't easy, but it's like playing, you know. It's interesting because it's like playing. You just follow the basic instructions and then you play with them. But again, I use Adobe Illustrator, for example. I have this template and play with it. And when I think it's done, I think it's noticeable, the design I want to achieve, I make the Guben sample. That is the way I work. So the Nordic folk are 2 collections and have been quite popular. My most popular woven 4x4 inches Pin Looms collections.
These are beautiful.
Those were included in a calendar last year, or this year.
Oh,
25,
oh, I
yes.
saw that on your website. Oh, how lovely.
First
I was
calendar.
thinking
Yeah.
that's a nice calendar to see fiber every day. I like that. That's great.
Yes, and the nice thing was that you received the digital collection, but the calendar itself had the pattern applied into some decorations at home. Let's say like the head back of the bed had one repeated, so one of the patterns. So you could see ways of applying those patterns to the daily use objects. So it was more,
Uh-huh.
more interesting than just the pattern collection.
Oh, good, good. Well, I have to say that the more I read about you and the more I looked on your website, I was just so impressed. And not only as you as an artist, but as an entrepreneur. I just was so impressed, and it was so parallel between how you, for lack of a better term, kind of pushed the envelope, thought outside the box with your weaving. I mean, you took these little squares and just ran with them and did all these amazing things. But you also did the same thing in your business. You didn't just say, oh, I'm going to teach some local people how to do this. You know, you went on the internet, you've used digital, that kind of thing. So, do you see that parallel of like you are someone who kind of pushes the envelope and goes that next step, whether it's your
Definitely.
artwork or your business?
Yes, I do. Yes, I like challenges. I mean, it is easy to change. Sometimes I am bored of squares, you know. I mean, of course, like 15 years on doing this, even though I have tried different things inside the same issue. Um, but it's interesting, and I think the key is looking this as more specific you are, more creative you can be.
Mm.
At the beginning, I used to have this mix of techniques. I had weaving, crochet, this finished items with a mix of things. Then I make a shift to making the kits and patterns for makers. So turning these finished items into patterns. But then it was not not enough. How can I say it? Again, it was crochet and too much stuff. So it was a bit confusing for the audience, and that is one thing. But the other thing is that I was confused too. I mean, you are communicating something confusing because a mix of things, but then you are all only like working in the surface, not going deeper enough.
Oh,
So when
right.
you focus, you really go in that same way, in that certain specific thing you choose. And it's surprising how you discover things around the same issue, even though it's a specific, it's one or whatever. And that is the challenge in one side, because sometimes it can be boring or can be like, what else I can do?
Mhm.
But also, when I go back and see what I've done in 15 years, it's impressive. Then you can move in different areas like publishing, like, I don't know, the classes, events, subscriptions.
Yeah, you've done so much with it. Yeah.
Yes, and different products and also technology moves. So this printing on demand, exporting but digital files. For example, in these days, my products are made in the US, not in Chile anymore, even though they used to. I used to export them, I mean, like all the way to the northern hemisphere. And that is something I discovered in the way of focusing on these squares. So was something like I wouldn't discover if I was working in too much stuff, like crocheting, like different techniques. Yes. So creativity and focusing.
There you go. Well, we've talked, off screen, and one of the things I keep saying is that, we want you to come to Convergence. I know some of you are already going, oh my gosh, she's talking about Convergence again. But you could also teach two different classes. You could teach how to be a businesswoman, entrepreneur, and then you could teach the weaving,
Fantastic.
because you've done so well in both. So anyway, all right, I'll quit singing your praises here. I do want to talk about your looms, because you offer looms on your website also. So would you talk about how you came upon the different looms? Did you design looms for yourself, or did you go out and find looms and said, oh, I like this one and we're going to sell it on my website and I'm going to use it?
Well, that is a Zoom loom that you should know from Charles Spindle. I love it because it's a great loom. So I don't have another one that works in trios. I know it's another brand, but we collaborate together, and my books have been focused on that pin loom. I mean, I use it, they are based on this pin loom. But especially for bias weaving, I have my own kits, because bias weaving is what I started from the beginning, from 15 years ago. And I think it started like trying to find the dream spin loom, the one that includes everything, the one that you can carry everywhere. And my husband used to have a furniture company in Santiago, a small one.
Ah,
He's also an industrial designer. So we used to develop in his spare time my pin looms. So this one, which is my most popular one, this one that is called the Caillou has 15 different shapes
oh
and
my gosh.
sizes. I mean,
So you could
big
do
shape,
triangle or square, right?
yeah, and rectangle, the
Oh,
three.
yeah, yeah.
That is my most popular one because you can carry it everywhere, but has a lot of possibilities, in one single surface.
You're a
And then
designer, I can tell.
I have made acrylic versions, flat ones. I am always thinking about how can I make them portable, because it's like my
Oh,
core phrase, or what I will try to achieve with my weaving kits, that they can carry them everywhere. That is my slogan this year. It's weave everywhere. and show that it's possible to add bits of time as
There we
someone
go.
one day. Okay, great. Those are the
But-
acrylic. In the yellow one, you have the same distance between the, I don't know, the heels, the pins. So that is for bias weaving. And the one in the left that has woven design on it is trios weaving, like the zoom loom. So in that kit, you can make both. So that is why it's called perfect couple, And the one in the right is the Caillou multi-loom.
I like that Caillou. That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, do you think the portability, because it's amazing, because pin looms have boomed. I mean, what was it, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, at our conference, they brought out pin looms and a lot of people were laughing at them and rolling their eyes. But all of a sudden, people were hooked. They loved them. So, do you think it's the portability, like you said, the immediate gratification? What's the popularity? What do you think? You
Maybe
can use
both.
any kind of yarn.
Maybe both. I made not a poll when I interview people from it's like a investigation I did with my audience
Uh-huh.
like 2 or 3 years ago, which was sorry, very interesting because of the results I got. I asked that. I wanted to know why or what, or I don't know, have clues of what I could keep developing. And it was interesting to know that many of them wanted um, to make the best of their time, of their spare time, or not the spare time, but the time that they have to spend on others. Like, let's say, take your kid to the doctor, go and watch a football play a match. I don't know, because you have to go with your husband, or I don't know, like women that we do a lot of things, multitasking. We want to make the best of our time, and we sometimes don't have enough time to sit and make something. Sometimes at night, maybe can watch TV series or something, but mostly we have these bits of time. Someone said bits of time. So that people resumed what a lot of others said, which was we can, I don't know the word, but it was like um, like join bits of time. We can join bits of time with pin loom weaving because you can take it everywhere. And I think that says a lot because I want to do crafting, but I don't have the time. There is an option to take this craft everywhere. And also it is so easy that I don't have to take it and try to remember what I was doing, or maybe I left it for a month and then I don't remember how it worked, because it's so easy that it's no way to forget. I mean, or you have a little little I don't know, like instruction maybe to start, but it's quite easy. So I think those are the I don't know, the features that people like about it. And also what we were talking about, it's that about the simplicity, that you have this simple square that is easy to weave, easy to learn how to do, but you can make many changes on it, like play with thicknesses, play with different qualities of yarn.
Yeah.
Of course, join them and make things, bigger things like that. The other thing that's very interesting is that what about spare yarn? A lot of people that
Huh?
practices pin loom weaving, what I see in my audience is that they do crochet, knitting, other techniques, and they have a lot of leftovers, a lot of them from other projects, or simply because they buy a lot of yarn, but leftovers, little pieces of yarn. And in these projects, you don't use more than 15 grams. So it's great to use those little pieces and don't have to just get rid of them. And a lot of them also make their own yarn, they spoon, so they can try the colors that they have dyed or made, and they frame them sometimes like little treasures. So it's interesting too. So those are more or less the reasons I think that the ones that I like to highlight, because I think they are the most important ones.
Well, what's next for you?
Well, I always try things. every year when the year finishes, I make a list of the good things I did and the bad thing, or the wrong or whatever, two very clear lists. And of course, both are full of things because I like, and I think we have to try things if we want to succeed and if we want to move forward. So for this year, I am trying three things mostly. One is like a touristic path because I'm starting a program through a platform to make like touristic trips. I'm not well developing it right now for people that are related to weaving that comes to Chile. So I can make a class, show them places like, I don't know, where you have alpacas or things or animals or related to weaving that they would be interested in, and also teaching what I do. Another thing that I'm trying now, it's about the services to weaving guilds or associations, making, I don't know, special projects, collaborations, designs, patterns, teaching more. And
Mhm.
next to or connected to teaching more, I am planning to travel more. Last year was the first time I took my work to the US, which is incredible because it's my main audience and it's the first time. But that is something I am planning. So convergence will be great, connected to my my future projects.
Yay!
That is more or less.
Well, we have a bunch of questions. And I have to say, there's a couple of comments that I got to see. One of them was they love your phrase joining bits of time, and I do too. That's again, I always say I want to put plaques up of things I've heard.
I have to thank the author. I don't remember who was, but I can
I don't,
find
we know who they are.
Yeah.
Joining bits of times, that's wonderful. And then somebody else said, how many of us are weaving on a pin loom at this very minute while we're watching this show? And I thought, true,
Exactly.
You're watching
That is all
TV,
about it.
your all-time favorite show, which we all know is Textiles and Tea, right? And you're doing a little bit of weaving. I like that. That's true. That's true. All right, we got a bunch of questions. Oh, what kind of yarns do you use on your bias woven squares? The fiber content and the size.
Bias woven. Well, the distance between the pins of the kits that I work with is ½ inch more or less. So the yarn recommended is bulky or super bulky.
Okay.
Bulky or super bulky. But the amazing thing is that you can grab different strands, different thicknesses, and make like a cord and work with it. You can also crochet your own yarn. You can also knit it. There are machines like these knitting machines that help. So there are a lot of ways to make thick yarn without buying it. Also, there's something interesting. Well, in this case, you're using the ideal yarn, the ideal thickness. This is just acrylic, but it's the ideal thickness because it works great. When you remove the square of the loom, it's, I mean, like it's a square, it's not deformed. So yarn that is non-elastic is recommended.
Oh,
And
okay.
in this case, for example, I played with it's something interesting. This is similar than felt, this is just combed, but thicker
Oh, that's
than what you
beautiful.
require. But I mix it with a very thin one. So then you have this sort of texture, which is so interesting. And this is bias
Yes.
weaving. So you can play. I mean, this one was one strand of the thick, one of the thin, and whatever. So I play a lot with that and with the simple stitches it has, because bias weaving doesn't have much stitches compared to 4x4 inches, let's say, but has other features.
And here's another question that kind of goes along with what we've been talking about. It said, this is from Christine Williamson. I love it that you publish so many designs for pin and continuous strand looms. Do the patterns in the book specify yarns, or are we allowed to use our own choices?
Both. I mean,
Okay.
they specify, but what I always challenge my students to do is to try out yarns, of course, color, thicknesses.
Yeah.
When they are beginners, and that is something that appears in the last book, is that it's a chapter where it says cons and pros, of this technique. And there it's recommended what yarns they shouldn't use because they are beginners. For example, dark colors, elastic yarns, whatever. But then when you have enough experience and confidence, of course, you can try out whatever you have. But you have a bit of restriction because the distance between the pins is very slight. I know it's very small. So that is why you cannot use very thick yarns, but they have to try them because sometimes they are too thick to weave, but when they finish the piece, it's interesting, it's dense, works for specific things. So, for example, here, there is a, here I
Yeah,
have a,
people are asking about that basket.
well, this is a part of my subscription that starts in May. One of the
Okay.
projects, 12 projects for a year. I mean, a year of 12 projects. 1 month, each month has one project. This is the basket of one of the month. And then this month, I showed how to join crochet and weaving. So you have 4 Woven squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, folded crochet finishings, and their crochet circle. So the amazing thing about mixing techniques is that you have the best of each, you know, the flexibility of knitting, the thickness of crochet, and the and also the flexibility of bias woven squares, but with plaid or added other motifs that you can make in crochet. I don't know. What else I had? Well, I had a design here, but maybe similar than what they were seeing. Again, here, for example, is a sweater. It's a summer, a cotton made. You have the
Wow.
back on the front. In this case, I made it with rectangles, 1, 2, and then a big square. Doesn't look like a square because it's too heavy as it's cotton, you know? But the thing is that you can replace the square by, sorry, the rectangle by squares because they are proportional. And then I have the calf, or I don't know, the finishing, other technique. This is crochets. And I don't know, this is one of the usual designs I used to make at the beginning, which is this plate that you achieve naturally without doing much effort. Well, and they can see a lot of designs I made, like, I don't know how many in
We've
both.
got 2 people, Betty Womack and Susan Ileo. Susan, I'm sorry, I just destroyed your name probably. And Christine Williamson. They were asking, what does Caillou? Is it Caillou? Caillou? What does that mean?
Well, it was a word in Mapuche language, which is an indigenous group of people from Chile, from our origins. So it means 6. Well, because at the beginning it was 6 shapes. I'm not sure it was that one name or the other. I'm not sure. Well, doesn't matter. The thing is that in another language that I'm not sure where it was, but an Asian one, it means wood. So I have been contacted sometimes from people from there saying, "Oh, this is good," and it's unreal. I mean, it's good, but just I wasn't intent to copy the word. But well, yes, can use the name.
Lou Fiskin-Ross wants to know which of your self-published books are most like the 100 Pin Loom Squares?
The last one, because have projects and patterns.
Okay. All right.
Instructions from scratch. Oversized.
Karen LeBlanc wants to know, I've never used a pin loom, but it looks like a piece of a forced selvage piece. Can you talk about the various sizes of pin looms that are available? You showed us so many, and the market is, there's so many different looms now. So
It really depends. I mean, when they ask that, I say, really depends on what you want to make and the way you live. I mean, what things do you want to achieve? I was saying that there's a lot of people that doesn't want to have a project in mind. They just want to weave squares. Everyone. There are people that know, I want to make a carpet, and that is what I want. Or I want to make one sweater for me. When I have this daughter, I want to make this little sweater for her. So it really depends on what you want to make. And also because, let's say, trios weaving in the Sunum, it's very slow because the technique itself is slow, but also it's a little square. And then you have bias weaving, which is very fast, but it's I don't know, a rougher result or thicker, not very detailed. So it really depends on what you want to make, what you choose. But in my website that you showed the address, there are the frequently asked questions, and there they can read what you can make with each technique, what do you require, how they work. They're all quite easy in any case.
Okay. And we're going to show that again before we end today, so you can see that. Brenda Holland wants to know, is the Nordic folk patterns going to be available in a book as well as the calendar?
Not anymore. I mean, it was a calendar like a certain project. It is published, but I'm gonna put it out in a few more months because, I mean, it's already 2025, so it is not, I mean, just the digital pattern will be there. But the first, let me think. Yes, the first Nordic folk collection, because there are two, is included in the 30 patterns book. It's included there.
Okay, the 30 pattern book.
The
Okay.
first one, yes. The second
All
one
right.
is not.
There you go, Brenda. Oh, people love your blouse. Sue Andrews wants to know, did you make it?
No, sorry. My mother gave it
You
to me.
always say yes. You always say yes. Even if you didn't, you always say yes. It is. Well, I was thinking to myself when you said you like color, because I thought the same thing. I love that blouse. And then you talked about how you like color. So
I've made clothing for myself, but not this one. Sorry.
Julia Weaver just wanted to say fascinating. Thank you for being on here today. I thank you too. And I think that is it. Somebody wants to know about suggestions for making small number of squares, like maybe 10 or less. Susan, I encourage you to go look at our books. I mean, there's tons.
You should visit the blog, because if you visit my
Oh, there you
blog,
go.
you have like different topics. You have to read the subject and say, oh, this one works. Or for example, let's say one is about yarn, only yarn, and they can
Okay.
choose, they can learn how to choose the yarn and the correct kit for weaving kit for that yarn. Then others are, I don't know, Christmas projects, and they have like a bunch of ideas, you know? I think that is better than only
You're
the
so
website.
generous.
No,
Offering that
I
information.
mean,
That's wonderful.
no, it's a great way to understand everything.
Well, I'm sorry to say we have to stop. But this is wonderful. I'm ready to go get my pin loom out and go get going,
Great.
you know? So thank you so much for being on here today. I look forward to seeing you at Convergence. And
Great.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank
I want
you
to
very much.
thank not only I'm sorry, y'all, I've been sick all week. Thank Florencia also, but our sponsor. And you can go to our website, and it's not her name, so be careful. It's Ullvuna,
Ullvuna. Yes, Ullvuna.
.lcl, because she is in Chile and not in the US.
Yes.
So check out our website. There's so much there to see. Her books are there, her blog, tons of information. So go check that out. But we also want to thank our sponsor, which is the Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. They have some incredible exhibits going on right now. One I would love to go see is the Contemporary Filipino Textiles is there right now. It's there till April. Unfolding by the Art Cloth Network has that got an exhibit there also. It's there through April. So check them out if you happen to be in the Southeast and you want to go see some beautiful quilts and textiles. It's not just quilts. Go check them out. Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. And thank you so much for sponsoring our episode today. We really do appreciate it. Sorry, y'all. We have Jurors Talk coming up. One more left. And it's such a great one. It's our small expressions. Our exhibit that's near and dear to our hearts is February the 6th. So be sure you sign up. It's 2:00 with Pauline Verbeek. She is with the Kansas City Art Institute. I think I'm saying that right. And she'll talk a lot again about what she saw as a juror, what she liked, what she chose. It's a great way to see the works from a different viewpoint. And then I always say this because it really is important. If you want to start being in exhibits, listen to what she has to say and get an idea. What do judges look for when they're jurying in pieces for an exhibit? And again, it's February the 6th. So check that out. It's going to be wonderful. We have Travel and Workshop Live coming up. If you're not familiar with Shuttle Spindle and Die Pot has an edition in we call Travel and Workshop. And we get our advertisers come in who want to tell you about exhibits, about tours, about conferences, and there's a bunch coming up this summer. And they're advertising, giving you information, telling you how to go register. And then we offer them an opportunity to go live, and it's great. I mean, you can see images, especially if you're thinking about a tour, or you can hear them talk about more detail about the conference or the workshop or the exhibit, and you can ask questions. So it is February the 20th. Be sure you sign up for that. It's free to the public, and we hope we'll see you there. It's great information, and I encourage you to go check it out and support our vendors and our sponsors. I want to thank the people who have donated and joined HGA. Your donations help these programs, whether it's Travel and Workshop Live, whether it's the Jurist Talk, all these programs that we offer are through the generous donations that you all make to the Handweavers Guild of America and joining HGA. So we do appreciate it. If you want to, you can go online to wespendie.org and you can join there. So thank you all so much for that. If you've missed any episodes, you can go back and watch them again. If you want to see this one again today, or get a friend, come on over. Let's do some squares and we'll watch Textiles and Tea. And you can watch them on the HGA Facebook page, or you can watch them on YouTube. I encourage you, if you do want to watch them on YouTube instead, so sorry, subscribe. And they will give you a notice every time a new episode comes up. Thank you so much for watching today. It was so much fun. I enjoyed this one. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. And we'll see you next week for Robin Kane. Thank you so much. Happy tea.